Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are stepping right into an absolute ancient thriller. And I mean, the scale of this thing is just massive. We're looking at King Janamajaya's infamous snake sacrifice. This wasn't some random event. It was a meticulous, absolutely terrifying ritual of total annihilation, all driven by one monarch's intense thirst for vengeance. So let's explore exactly how this wild situation unfolds.
Okay, let's dive into this. Seriously, think about it. How do you stop an unstoppable ritual of extermination? Because that is the exact terrifying dilemma facing the victims in our story today. When the wheels of absolute vengeance are set in motion by a massively powerful king, and backed by the cosmos itself, no less, escaping it seems, well, literally impossible. There's this profound, heavy existential dread looming over the entire narrative. We're looking at a catastrophe that is systematic, relentless, and completely inescapable for anyone caught in its crosshairs. To really wrap our heads around the gravity of this, it's fascinating to look at the minds behind the event. These weren't your, traditional executioners. Actually, scratch that. They were the era's absolute greatest scholars. This wasn't some chaotic, disorganized slaughter. It was a cold, incredibly methodical, and highly complex Vedic preparation. The architects of this devastation were wise, deeply learned men executing their duties with a precision that is just chilling.
I mean, just look at the heavy hitters gathered here as Sadasyas, the overseers. You've got Vyasa, right alongside his son and disciples. You've got Jaimini, the legendary Narada, Uddalaka, Swetaketu, and Pingala. The source material literally lists dozens of these foremost brahmanas, these ancient, learned sages who spent their entire lives engaged in the study of the Vedas. Reading through this roster, it's like looking at the ultimate gathering of ancient intellectual and spiritual titans, all united under this one singular, terrifying objective. It's really wild to break down the clinical, almost mechanical roles of these elite priests, the Ritwiks. They are the guys on the ground actively executing the sacrifice. You have the Brahmana Chandabhargava acting as the Hatri, and his job is just the methodical, continuous pouring of clarified butter into this roaring fire. And then you've got the old, learned Kautsa acting as the Udgatri, the one chanting the sacred Vedic hymns. There's such a staggering contrast here, right? You have the beautiful chanting of ancient hymns and the rhythmic pouring of butter completely juxtaposed against the backdrop of the unspeakable horror that these very actions are unleashing. Because the second that clarified butter hits the fire, the true, grotesque nature of the sacrifice is totally exposed. Terrible snakes, the kind that strike fear into every creature, begin to fall helplessly from the sky directly into the flames. And the sensory details from the source text here, they are incredibly visceral. The text literally describes the fat and the marrow of the snakes falling into the fire and beginning to flow in rivers. Just sit with that image for a second. The methodical pouring of butter has ignited a blaze fueled entirely by the bodies of countless victims. The devastation is absolute. It is overwhelming. The atmosphere itself becomes completely corrupted by the horrific collateral damage of the king's vengeance. There is this insufferable stench from the incessant burning that just fills the air entirely. The sheer scale of the death toll is unimaginable. It's essentially a localized apocalypse, a systematic extermination creating an environment that is utterly suffocating to literally any living creature nearby. And this brilliantly illustrates the true terror of the moment. It isn't just the physical burning, it's the sheer auditory nightmare that accompanies it. The incessant, agonizing cries of the snakes already fallen into the fire, merging with the panicked screams of those suspended in the air, helplessly plummeting toward their doom. It brings the terrifying, inescapable reality of the falling victims to life in a way that is just deeply, deeply unsettling. So, the crucial point is how wildly differently the survivors experience this apocalypse. Take Takshaka, the prince of snakes. The moment he heard about the sacrifice, he bolted straight to the palace of Indra, acknowledged his fault, and secured political sanctuary. Boom. Because the cosmos was pacified on his behalf, Takshaka is entirely safe, dwelling in joy and happiness. But then, look at Vasuki, the king of the snakes. He's on the ground, completely without sanctuary, helplessly watching his family be reduced to ashes. He is afflicted with great grief, his limbs are literally burning, and his heart is breaking. The contrast between that political immunity and total despair, it couldn't be sharper.
Vasuki is basically experiencing a complete physical and mental breakdown. He is watching his family incessantly fall into the flames, realizing their numbers are reduced to almost nothing. He's crying out that his limbs are burning, his sight is failing so much that he can't even see the points of the heavens anymore. He is benumbed, teetering on the verge of fainting from a total loss of consciousness, his mind just violently turning. He's absolutely terrified that in his paralyzed state of grief, he himself is going to tumble into that blazing fire today.
Now, why this matters, what you really should take away from this, is captured perfectly in Vasuki's agonizing realization here. This isn't just a punishment for a few bad actors. It is a full-blown genocide. King Janamejaya, the son of Parikshit, has designed this specifically for the extermination of an entire race. It is the ultimate horrific price of unchecked vengeance. Vasuki recognizes that it's entirely evident he too will soon have to go to the abode of the king of the dead if something or someone doesn't intervene immediately.
So in his absolute darkest hour, facing the literal ashes of his people, Vasuki makes a last-ditch bid for salvation. He summons his sister. But listen, this isn't just a desperate cry for familial comfort. Oh no, this is a tactical maneuver that was set up years in advance. He's calling upon the very sister that he strategically bestowed upon a sage named Jarikaru for this exact purpose, to protect their relatives. Let's move to and see how this builds, because the breadcrumbs of destiny have been laid out just perfectly here. According to Vasuki, way back in ancient times, the cosmic creator, the Grandsire, issued a prophecy that a specific individual would one day put an end to this sacrifice. Acting on that, years prior, Vasuki married his sister off to the sage Jarikaru. In the recent past, that union produced a son, Astika, who grew up fully conversant in the Vedas. And now, in the blazing, horrific present, the time has finally come. The weapon of salvation has been engineered, and it is time to deploy him. Vasuki begs his sister with literally everything he has left. He tells her, "Solicit thy dear son." He makes sure to emphasize that Astika, despite being so young, is fully conversant with the sacred texts and is highly regarded even by the oldest, most learned sages. Vasuki desperately needs his sister to send her son directly into the horrifying fray, to somehow stand up against the greatest scholars of the age, and to protect Vasuki and all those dependent on him from total annihilation. And that leaves us dangling right on the edge of a massive precipice. We've got an unstoppable ritual of extermination, fueled by vengeance and orchestrated by the absolute most powerful minds of the era. And standing in its way is a single young scholar, born of a strategic alliance, carrying the immense weight of a desperate prophecy. So, will Astika actually have the power, the knowledge, and the courage to step up to that roaring fire and halt the extermination of his mother's race? It's a haunting question for sure, and honestly, a perfect place to wrap up this explainer. Thank you so much for joining me to unpack this incredible ancient epic. Catch you next time.